Welcome! Over the next 15 minutes, we will provide an overview of the Identity Manager. We will start with a little background of the product, its value proposition, and finally, a product demo. The Identity Manager contains traditional features found in an identity management system. This includes the features such as synchronization, which allows you to take data from a source system such as a relational database, LDAP, or a flat file and synchronize it with one or more target systems. The product supports role and rule-based provisioning. The provisioning system uses connectors that either comply with SPML2 or use web services. The web services approach makes it easy to create new connectors since anyone who can write a web service, regardless of language, can create a new connector for the Identity Manager. Another great feature of the Identity Manager is self-service. This is where users can maintain their own profile, change passwords, and update their challenge response questions. Self-service also supports request approval functionality and delegated administration. The next slide talks about our value proposition. The current market leaders offer complex and expensive solutions based on architectures that are over 10 years old. The Identity Manager represents the current state-of-the-art solution with its SOA architecture and compliance to standards. The effectiveness of this solution is actively being proven through our current enterprise deployments that range from 5,000 users to over 600,000 users. We are now ready to go through the product demo. We start out by creating a user, showing how workflow can be used, followed by how policies and synchronization from a source system are defined. A user can be created in several ways. In most cases, we would synchronize from a source. For this example, we're going to use the admin console to create a user. The first thing you need to do is to select an object class. The object class uses metadata to define additional attributes for a user object without having to change the underlying schema. In this way, we can have different types of users, such as internal users or customers, and each have their own attributes. The workflow engine provides users with a graphical designer to create processes. In this case, we are going to create a simple request approval process. After we design the process, we need to define the rules for each task. The Notify Approver task needs to send a message to the approver. This is done by using our notification service. In our task, we can add the web service client connector and define the call to our notification service. The designer can also be used to create new forms. In this case, we will create a form using the variables that are global to the process. Returning back to our admin console, we will query the user that we have just created and look at its details. The user details screen shows the information we just entered earlier. The extended attributes screen shows the custom attributes that were added through the metadata when we selected our object class. The identities screen shows all the identities that we created across the different systems that this user has access to. In this case, it was LDAP, and we see the identity for LDAP. The identities are created through attribute policies that we will look at shortly. Next, we will look at some of the policies that we can define. The password policies let you define things like password composition, frequency of change, and challenge response questions. We can associate password policies at different levels. We can define global policies or more fine-grained policies, which can be linked to the type of user. The authentication policy lets you define parameters such as the type of the security token, the repository to use for authentication, and the number of failed authentication attempts before a user is locked out. Attribute policies are used extensively during provisioning. This lets you define rules on how to construct the value of an attribute. In this example, we are defining a rule to create a user's identity. As part of the rule, we check if the identity exists. To be able to provision users into target systems, we need to configure the connectors and a synchronization source. Here we see how the web service-based connectors are defined. All we need to do is define the URL for the service. This lets you deploy the service on other servers in the network. Here we define connectivity to LDAP. Once the connectors to the target system have been defined, we define the synchronization source. In this case, we're using a relational database, but we could also have used a CSV file or LDAP. Important components in the synchronization setup are the scripts for validation and transformation and the match attributes. The scripts allow you to validate data that is coming in from the source, and transformation scripts allow you to map the incoming data into objects that the synchronization log shows you what occurred during the synchronization process. It shows when it started, which users were processed, and which system each user was provisioned into. The Role Manager screen allows you to link roles to one or more systems. In this case, we assigned LDAP to the end user role. Whenever a user joins the end user role, they will be provisioned into LDAP. The directory lookup provides white pages functionality where users can search for other users. The detail view also provides information on a user's supervisor and their direct reports. Edit Profile lets users maintain their own profile. These updates will be synchronized into the target systems. The self-service application lets the user select They're challenge response questions. The answers to these questions are used to unlock users without having to call the help desk, which provides the company with significant cost savings. The Forgot Password feature is used to unlock the user's account upon lockout, or if the user has simply forgotten their password. The user has to successfully answer their challenge response questions and they can reset their password. Thank you for taking the time to view our Identity Manager demo.